Good morning, good evening. There you go. Seems to be working. Okay, let's try this again from the top. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Dr. Garais, and this is BIO104, Anatomy Physiology 2, ECPI University. And this is the Digestive System, Unit 3, Week 3. Unfortunately, the Tuesday, February 7 live lecture didn't work out due to technical difficulty. So I'm redoing the video here, so you can enjoy. So here's the main organs, of course, starting from the top to the bottom, and they should have showed the rest of it because your mouth, your throat, before the esophagus, which is your food tube, is also important. We're going to go over that in a minute. And these are the different layers. Now remember the overall function. I'll go a little bit over. Watch the video as well because the extra videos with that Alton person. I forgot his name. I should remember because we used a lot of their videos. Well, the main purpose of this is it's pretty much a processing conveyor belt, and we're taking food and we're converting it to energy. Okay. So everything has to be converted into glucose. And of course, we're breathing, and oxygen and glucose are vital for energy. So that's the function of your digestive system. And the digestive system breaks things down or digests things in two ways, either physically or chemically. Okay. And the physical parts, we learned that it was chewing, mastication, also the mixing functions of your stomach as well. There's also propulsion movement to take the food that eventually becomes a bolus, right? After it leaves the mouth into the pharynx, and then after it gets transformed in the stomach, turns into chyme, right? And we want to absorb in the small intestines all the nutrients that we want, and then we want to absorb the water in the large intestine, but the large intestine also makes feces. So that's the general overview. And also, when we discuss enzymes a little bit later, when we talk about the different chemicals, because you have the physical part of digestion, there's also the chemical part. And I'll expand more on what enzymes are and what they do for us. So, like I stated in lecture, you see layers. It's a good question. It's a potential question. So you have the outer tough serosa, middle muscularis layer, which the majority, if not almost all, this entire system is part of your autonomic nervous system. Remember, the prefix auto means self, therefore you can't control it. So all of this becomes automatic. The submucosa is an important layer because this layer, right before we get into the inner lumen, the hole in the middle is called the lumen. The submucosal layer is full of arteries and veins because this thing is a living thing and it needs oxygen from your arteries. It needs to carry out carbon dioxide through your veins. It also has a lymphatic system, and specifically the lymphatic system in your gastrointestinal tract deals with these vessels called lacteals, lacteals, and those remove excess fat from your gastrointestinal system. This whole entire system is called the gastrointestinal because the stars are your stomach, gastro, and of course your intestines. This whole entire pathway is also called the alimentary tract. That is ALIMENTARY. So starts at the mouth, ends at the anus. And there's a whole bunch of doors or sphincters that are circular muscles. What do you think your mouth is? What do you think the two muscles are in your anus are? Right? And we went over the different doors. So you have one here, lower esophageal sphincter, pyloric sphincter, and connecting from your small intestine. Last part is your ileum, and the first part of your large intestine is your cecum. So there has to be a door here or sphincter here, the ileocecal valve. It's right there. Well, back to our picture here. Inside the middle is, of course, the mucosal layer, the more inside layer. We've learned that mucosa has um, an immunologic function by trapping foreign body and potential pathogens. But the mucosa in your gastrointestinal tract, its function is to, of course, secrete mucus for lubrication so that our propulsive forces, right, can push the food products down and eventually push the fecal products out. Okay, so that's an overview and with a little bit of a preview of some of the stuff that we talked about. Accessory organs, they're your teeth for chewing, your liver for your metabolic functions, your gallbladder. Liver makes bile, but the gallbladder stores it, concentrates it, and then releases it. And remember, your bile in your gallbladder is an emulsifier. It is not a lipase. Now, what's the difference? An emulsifier will break down large globules into smaller micelles or smaller digestible units, but it's still fat. But a lipase, when it acts on fat, it actually breaks down fat into fatty acid chains and the other components part of your fat is a triglyceride. So you have triglycerides and fatty acid chains, and that's actual breakdown. So think lipase, it's actually breaking down the fat into something that isn't fat anymore. But your emulsifier, your bile, is breaking down large globules into small ones. Your pancreas, we talked about, has exocrine and endocrine function, and these are connected to the alimentary tract, aka your gastrointestinal tract, but they're accessory organs. They help in things. Teeth, of course, and that includes your gingiva, which is your gum line. And we already talked about how the oral cavity of your mouth here, this area, is very, very, for lack of a term, dirty. It has a lot of potential pathogens, a lot more than the rest of your alimentary tract, aka your GI, gastrointestinal tract. When we start off in the oral cavity, you have your masseter here. It's a main muscle for chewing. Another word for chewing is mastication. Part of that mastication is your tongue here, which smashes food into your hard palate, which is the top part, the roof of your mouth, right? And you have your uvula right here. You know that punching bag that's in the middle of your back of your throat. It acts as a rudder to kind of steer food. Two reasons why you have that. It one steers food into your pharynx, so into your throat, which is your pharynx, to go into your esophagus, which is your food tube, and it also closes up the nasal portion of your nose, so that remember I told the story about my friend who drank milk and he could, if you make him laugh, it comes out of his nose. Well, if his uvula was normal, which probably it wasn't, that shouldn't happen. This is when the lecture, remember, sidetracked a little bit, and I talked about the functions of the liver and how I like the functions of the liver here. The list is kind of backwards. So breaks down glycogen into glucose, converts excess carbohydrates and proteins into fats. Fat gets stored in the liver as this thing called glycogen. Now, when you eat a large meal, you want to store things into glycogen. But if you haven't eaten for a while, for example, you haven't eaten breakfast and the last time you ate was like 10 o'clock at night, right? Well, we're going to have to get some glycogen to break down in our liver so that your blood glucose can increase. And I mentioned earlier, remember the gallbladder right here? It's also the role is to produce bile, to secrete it, and bile the emulsifier that emulsifies fat, to secrete it and store it and concentrate it in the gallbladder. So the production of bile, liver, the storage, concentration, and eventual secretion into the first part of your small intestine, which is the duodenum, is here at the gallbladder. And last but not least, of course, it removes toxins and also anything that you eat, any drug that you take has to go through the liver. And in your pharmacology classes, you'll learn that's called the first pass effect. Gallbladder is here, right underneath liver. Liver is located in your right upper quadrant. Now the pancreas. Now remember the pancreas, very important. It's endocrine functions, insulin and glucagon. Remember, take a pause. Listen to this part because it's definitely going to come out. Insulin gets released from your pancreas. Your pancreas is right here into the bloodstream in order for, like, so if you eat a big meal, insulin gets released from your pancreas, and then the insulin acts as a key. Insulin is a hormone, acts as a key that'll open up a receptor, which is a protein on cells that acts like a lock to open up the door, because we want sugar to go where? Inside. Let's see if we can draw instead of me just talking about it. Can I draw? Let's use green because it's very different. So if I ate a big meal, let's draw a big meal. I'm trying to be neat. If I have a big meal, right? It's going to do what? Signal insulin. Okay? The insulin is going to act like a key, and it's going to tell the receptor on the cell, let's draw a cell here, to let glucose where? In. Because remember, glucose is a fuel, and I'll write glucose as GLC. It's a common medical abbreviation. Okay? So you got a big meal. Insulin gets released from the pancreas, and it opens up the doors so that glucose can get in. Right? And it makes sense because I need my fuel where? Inside my gas tank, which is inside the cells, so I can make energy. Well, let's talk about what happens when you're starving. Remember I told you a story about me and my cousin Shane? We got caught up on the mountain for a couple of days. When I think about it, man, we almost died. But, you know, when you're a kid, what do you know? So what happens when I haven't eaten for a while? So let's just use the word starving. When, you know, I'm not really starving, but, you know, you haven't eaten for more than 14 hours. So I'm starting to have a starvation state. Starving. I really should get. I used to have this drawing pad, makes like life easier. I could write quicker, but that's all right. You're starving. So what is the pancreas going to release? So you don't have any glucose in your blood. You don't have any glucose in your blood, you'll have no energy. That's a problem. So when you're starving, right, that lack of glucose in your blood, you become hypoglycemic, and then glucagon gets released in the pancreas. Then glucagon tells the liver, hey, buddy, can you open up the glycogen stores? And I'm going to make glycogen like a box so that the glycogen can then do what? Release glucose into the bloodstream. So I won't be hypoglycemic. I won't die. I'll be okay. Now, remember we mentioned if you're super starving, meaning greater than 14 days. So me and my cousin Shane, I think we kind of ate for the first day, and then we couldn't trap anything, and the weather was bad. Yeah, by day 2, day 3, we haven't eaten really for like almost 48 hours or so. So what happens? If you're super starving, that same glucagon signals to the liver. But the problem is the liver won't release, won't break down glycogen or the glucose stores in the way you think you should, and it will release ketones. And ketones are neurotoxic, and they're bad news. And that's why you shouldn't be in a starvation state. That's why you shouldn't go on a starving diet. That's why, because you should eat regularly. Okay. So what questions could come out? I could ask, what is the endocrine function of the pancreas? If I ate a big meal, what hormone will the pancreas release? Insulin. What will insulin do? It'll lower my blood sugar by getting the sugar inside the cell. If I'm starving or I haven't eaten in a while, pancreas will release glucagon. The glucagon then tells the liver, and this box is the storage form of glycogen. And it'll break down the glycogen to make glucose, and then it'll raise up my blood pressure. I'm not blood pressure, raise up my blood sugar, which is what I need because I'm starving. I need some sugar. Because remember the two things I need to live, especially my brain. I need sugar in the form of glucose, which is a monosaccharide, a very basic sugar, and I need oxygen. Now, what's this exocrine function? Now, you see this part here? This is the duodenum, the first part of your small intestine. So let's draw another color. Let's make it, I don't know, purple. So the exocrine function, right? What gets released into the small intestine? So let's draw an arrow to the duodenum, the small intestine, and let's draw the things pancreas will send out fluid to make to increase the pH. That's one. So you have pancreatic juice that will increase the pH. Because the pH is very low because the stomach is acid. So we have pancreatic juice here that will increase the pH. Another thing, the pancreatic juice, and I'm writing it all in purple, is they're going to have pancreatic lipase that will break down lipids. I here. You also have pancreatic proteinase, which is going to also break down further proteins. And you have pancreatic amylase, which breaks down starches or carbohydrates. So this slide is really chunky. It's got a lot of juicy things, pun intended. So the pancreas is very important. So if you get pancreatic cancer, that's why the prognosis is very bad, because you could see how important the pancreas is, and it has a head here and a tail right here. And it's intimately located like underneath and in the back of your stomach. and it's directly connected to the first part of your small intestine, which is the duodenum. Okay, so that is that. Okay, very, very nice slide. A lot of juicy things. Now we talked about ingestion, of course. That's voluntary. I have to put that into my mouth. Part of the voluntary is also the mechanical processing, the chewing, mastication. But digestion, secretion, absorption, and excretion, that's all automatic. Peristalsis, automatic. It is um, what do you call that? It's the movement of your esophagus to propel food towards your stomach. And look up that video of swallowing. Just write process of swallowing or anatomy of swallowing and check it out on YouTube. You could see how it was a lovely animation and also a nice X-ray of lateral view of someone chewing. Now, part of your oral cavity here, which is your mouth, you have three salivary glands, and they have two products. They have, of course, amylase, which is an enzyme that breaks down carbohydrates, and it has also mucus that also gets released. Remember, the mucus is for lubrication. Now, remember we talked about how, well, maybe in the next picture, and salivary amylase, of course, it's going to break down carbohydrates. Teeth, I can't tell you much about teeth, but not a big topic for this particular class. Just know that teeth, part of mastication, part of the chewing, and the gum line, which is called your gingiva. G is in George, Ingiva is just as important as your teeth because this starts to fail, this will fail, and then you get a whole bunch of problems. And remember, there are also bacteria, viruses, and foreign body that have been proven that if my patient doesn't clean, the plaque, that whitish yellow stuff that builds around here in your gum line, there is a direct correlation between that and coronary artery disease and heart disease. The pharynx is your throat. And remember, you have your oropharynx, nasopharynx, and here, right here, where the cartilage is, your laryngopharynx. Oropharynx is the connection of your throat to your mouth. Your nasopharynx is the connection of your nose to your throat. And your laryngopharynx is your larynx here, or your voice box, and its connection to your throat and your voice box here. This is your trachea. You know it's your trachea because it's anteriorly located and it has cartilage on it. And this is your windpipe. So this is the front of my patient. This is anterior. The posterior is what we're focusing on today, which is your esophagus, also known as your food tube. Here's your esophagus, and movement of your esophagus goes down here in a pinching coordinated movement called peristalsis. Vomiting is the exact opposite. It's called reverse peristalsis. And in either situation, you have no control on how it's going to get to the stomach or get to the toilet, either direction. And it comes rhythmically, as my graphic um, presentation in class yesterday. Deglutition is swallowing. When you start chewing stuff, it changes the food. So therefore, the food is now no longer food. It's bolus because it's mixed with saliva, it's mixed with serous fluid, and it's also mixed with mucus from your salivary glands. The first phase is the buccal phase, which is your chewing, mastication, and it's in your mouth. So this is voluntary. Now, the pharyngeal phase, once it starts going down your throat and then into the peristalsis, into your esophagus, then it's involuntary. That means the voluntary phase is part of your somatic nervous system. The involuntary phase is part of your autonomic nervous system. Once it gets down to the stomach, there's two doors. You have the lower esophageal sphincter here, also known as your cardiac sphincter, and then you have your pyloric sphincter here. The stomach acid is around pH 1. It's highly reactive, and the mucosal lining, the thick mucosal lining of the stomach helps protect it. And another thing that the stomach has are these folds called rugae. Okay, let's see if what's going on. These folds here are called rugae, right? And allow the stomach to expand. The acidic environment helps aid in several things, helps activate enzymes. And another thing that the acid does, it kills all, well, majority of bacteria and foreign body, things that may be potentially detrimental to the human body. Another thing that it does is releases this this chemical called intrinsic factor, so that vitamins such as B12 can get absorbed in your small intestine. And remember, vitamins are coenzymes. They help the enzymes break down stuff. So if you don't have vitamins in your life, and how do you get them? You don't get them by buying pills. It'll just go through your system if you're buying pills. You have to eat a well-balanced, healthy diet. After all the processing in the stomach, or as it's processing, that bolus that was in your mouth or oral cavity and your esophagus will then be converted into chyme. And it's definitely called chyme by the time it enters the small intestine, or the first part of the small intestine, which is your duodenum. So your stomach has different regions. Remember, the lower esophageal sphincter here is part of the cardiac region. This bump right here is called the fundus. The main part is called the body or corpus. Your pylorus is your distal or end part. And of course, you have a pyloric sphincter here so that chyme doesn't leak out until it's finished processing. This is called the lesser curvature of the stomach. This and here is called the greater curvature. And those are the parts of the stomach. Digestion, you have these enzymes called pepsin, starts with pepsinogen, then gets activated. Pepsinogen gets activated to pepsin, and then what will it do? It will break down proteins. So pepsin is an enzyme that breaks down proteins, because proteins have peptide bonds. So P for pepsin, P for peptide, P for protein. And of course, salivary amylase, we all know what that does. And there's chemical breakdown, and there's also mixing in your stomach. That's why your stomach rumbles every once in a while. The small intestine, the main function of the small intestine is absorption of nutrients. There are three parts: duodenum, jejunum, and ileum, in that order. The duodenum is the first part, the ileum is the last part. The ileum is connected into the first part of the large intestine called the cecum. Therefore, at the level of the ileum, there is an ileocecal valve. And it makes sense because in my small intestine, I'm absorbing nutrients. In my large intestine, I'm absorbing water. I don't want the two to mix. And in the large intestine, I'm making feces. There's E. coli in my large intestine, and I don't want to get all that water and E. coli and feces into my small intestine, because my small intestine is busy absorbing nutrients. So whoever built us kind of perfect, built us an ileocecal valve in here. It's also my way of remembering ileum, last part of small intestine, cecum, first part of large intestine. Pyloric sphincter, that's the end of the stomach. We already went through that. Bile, we already talked about how bile emulsifies. It means what? It's going to break apart large fat globules into smaller globules. It's sometimes also called a detergent. So emulsifier and detergent. So it's not really chemically breaking down a fat molecule. it is just making the fat molecules smaller so that the lipase, specifically the pancreatic lipase, can break it down faster and easier. At the level of the cecum, which is the first part of your large intestine, you have your appendix here. This band here is it's called your tenia coli, and that's specific to uh, your large intestine. Next is the parts of the large intestine, I believe. So of course, that's the cecum. Next part going up, ascending colon, right? And you have this thing's called a flexure or like a turn. And this flexure here is called your hepatic flexure because your liver is right here. Transverse colon, descending colon, but right here is another flexure. That's your splenic flexure because your spleen is somewhere on this side, which is the left side of my patient. Then that last S shape, curvy line before we get to the rectum. And this curvy S-shaped, that's your sigmoid colon. Then, of course, the last 10 centimeters or so, give or take, on average, regarding a 70-kilogram male, that is your rectum, right? The anal canal is the last portion. The anal canal is made up of your internal and external anal sphincters, right? Now, your internal anal sphincter, you cannot control it. It is what? ANS, or autonomic nervous system control. The external anal sphincter, which is at the very, very end, that's the one you can manually, voluntarily pucker it up. And that is skeletal muscle, also known as controlled by the somatic nervous system. Somatic nervous system is the exact opposite of the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is automated, auto, self. But the somatic nervous system, soma, body, you voluntarily control it. Okay, so know the difference between internal anal sphincters. Reminds me of Wayne's World. Right? So you have an internal one, autonomic nervous system, can't control it. And why do we have an internal versus external? The external, of course, somatic, I can hold it in, but the internal relies on on signals from my colon saying that it's distended, it's full of feces. Hey, you got to open it up. Large intestine, of course, absorbs water and makes waste. As it making waste, during the chemical process, some gas is formed, and that is called flatus. Or the process of passing gas or farting, that's flatulence. There's also a bunch of intestinal bacteria. Remember, E. coli being the most popular one, also known as Escherichia coli. You need it because it helps synthesize vitamins. And vitamins are very important because they are coenzymes to the enzymes, meaning that they make the enzymes more efficient and faster. And there could be some reabsorption of bile salts, which is a nice touch at the end. Now, I believe I skipped over this part. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of break. Who knows? But know your vitamins. Um, the bacteria in the colon, E. coli, makes these vitamins, and they're important. So vitamin K, important for clotting factors. Biotin, because they're important for recycling and breaking down glucose, which you now know is crazy important, especially in the liver. And vitamin B5, which deals with neurotransmitters and steroid hormones. So you could see how having normal flora like Escherichia coli in your colon, it's needed. And excessive antibiotic abuse, that'll mess things up. Or any gastrointestinal disease that messes with your colon, that also messes things up. So know your vitamins and know the functions. Transit time, mass movements, we kind of talked about that, how the movements in your stomach are timed. And you can actually, just like the character Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory, who times his defecation, right? Because it's cyclic, it goes, the contractions are organized and rhythmic. Age-related, eh, the one thing really big about age-related changes in GI tract is dehydration. When you get older, you really should drink more, and because the efficiency of your large intestine, also known as your colon, of um of taking in water gets really bad. And then you get things like impacted feces, constipation, and those are, especially when you're older and have other pains and other problems, it complicates matters. Okay. So that is this video in a nutshell, right? Let me see. This. And let's talk about, so look at these digestive system videos. They're nice, and they're short. And remember, let's open up one real quick. Remember, they go in stages.
Let me introduce you to one of the bravest pioneers in the history of life on Earth. An organism that blazed the trail for every single vertebrate that lives on
So when you
land
open
today,
up the
and
full
many that
screen,
don't.
you
It's
see
one
it
of your
goes in
most
chapters.
important ancestors. Meat? Well, it doesn't have a name.
All right. So, oh, that's respiratory. Sorry. But look over these digestive system videos. They're really good, and they also supplement what's going on. The other topic that we talked about yesterday, which was if you look at your assignments, and I believe I published the list of, and if you're not on the list of assignments for your week 5, it's now week 3, in the beginning of week 5, that Tuesday, you have to hand in your PowerPoint, and everyone was assigned today. So let's look at, that's exams, quiz, process. Here you go. So when you look under assignments, you don't go under course project, you click on that. And then there's some things. Read this because it has due dates on it. And if you fail to have the due date, since it's week 5, there's not much I could do to help you. Okay? And it's 15% of your grade. So you can easily tank your grade if you miss this opportunity. But but it's important, 50% of the points will be because of the PowerPoint, 50% will be your 5 to 10-minute presentation. Remember, keep your presentation relatively short and simple. Remember what I stated in class. The best clinicians are the ones who can take complex things or semi-complex things and have the ability to explain it clearly to a 10-year-old. Right? So have that in mind when you're doing your presentation. I also have and if you're not good at PowerPoints and you don't know what APA 7th edition is, um, get a call to me, get a call to our librarian. Please do that now because you'll be seeing that APA format for the rest of your career. Even now, years and years after I've been in academia, I still use those formats. I have to hand in a report tomorrow, and I have sources that I have to show that are legitimate. So remember, follow directions. You have to have a title page, the full title of your presentation, your full name, and the full name of this course. If you look at, you click on here, home, it's BIO104, yada, yada, yada. Put the full name and make sure to spell my name correctly. Okay, because you should put in, and I have it right here, right? Please put my middle initial. Filipinos are just like, have Spanish middle names. So it's to honor my mother. And I always put uh, um, her surname here in the middle. Submission date should be by February 21, 2023 in here. So there'll be a submission button. You click on it and then of course you put that PowerPoint because that's the PowerPoint you'll be graded on, right? If you're having technical difficulties, please email me, but don't email me like the night before. That's why I'll allot some time. Hopefully we'll get some time this Thursday for you guys to at least start it. You should have an introduction page, definition from a credible source. Don't get it from Wikipedia. Wikipedia, anyone can edit that. No dictionaries, even if it's a medical dictionary. Try finding a .org, which is like a hospital or a professional medical group, or a .gov, like Department of Health or National Institute of Health, or .edu. Don't make it a grade school. You make it a medical school or a school of nursing, right? Talk about in your introduction page after you have the definition of your disease, and that's what we assigned to everybody. We signed everyone a disease. Talk about what is it, you know, and how many people does it hit? Is it frequent? Is it common? Is it uncommon? Is it more common in other countries? Who does it affect? And put statistics in that, that make sense, that are germane to your topic. The next set of slides or slide should be, how do you get it? Is it infectious, your disease? What are predisposing factors? What are risk factors? How does the disease spread if the disease is communicable, right? Typical history or patient profile. Talk about what's your, um, um, uh, like, who gets it? Like, for example, breast cancer. Who gets it? Someone who has a genetic predisposition, someone who has genetic markers. It typically affects women more than men, that kind of thing. Right? Pathophysiology and signs and symptoms. This is the crux of the matter. You guys had already some physiology and anatomy. So you take that anatomy and physiology knowledge, relate to your class lectures to show how your disease messes everything up. And the example I used in class is breast cancer. What's cancer? We learned in anatomy and physiology that cells typically grow and then stop, or cells have a plan to grow and then they become something and then they die. The problem with cancer is it's a copy of a copy, and it keeps on going. So you could talk about the signs and symptoms of breast cancer, like an inverted nipple, pot orange skin or orange peel skin, or a malformation or a deformation or a dimpling of breast tissue. Now, how does that relate to cancer? Well, if cancer, let's say for example, this room was a duct or a room inside your breast tissue. Well, that breast tissue would do what? If there was a lot of cancer, a lot of cells, wouldn't it break the walls? Wouldn't it break the floor? If that happened, the ceiling, which is the top part of the skin of the female breast, would then collapse. Hence, that's why you get inverted nipples. That's why you get dimpling of the skin. That's why you get orange peel skin or pot orange skin. It's because the ducts are being broken down by the sheer force of the number of cancer cells that are growing out of control. That's how you explain it. Now, signs and symptoms, remember, goes, a sign is objective, meaning it's an object. You see it, I see it, the whole world sees it. For example, a sign is like a stop sign. It's red, it's octagonal, and it says what? STOP in it. It's not debatable. It is what it is. We all see it. But what's a symptom? A symptom is how a patient feels, like pain, or if your patient feels feverish, or the patient feels pressure. What does that mean? It could mean one thing for one person and another thing for another. So be able to differentiate a sign versus a symptom and relate it to this pathophysiology. Last but not least, APA 7th edition citation format. At the very, very end, you'll have a reference list. A reference list is a list of all your citations done in 7th edition APA format in alphabetical order. Now, it goes, what do you cite? And definitely you're going to cite where you got the definition from, any pictures you used, and make sure you use pictures and diagrams that make sense and that are easily explainable. And make sure you cite where you got them from, and you could look up how to cite pictures, how to cite diagrams in APA 7th edition format. You can Google that or come see me. All right. So your response is well conceived, it's college level, right? And if you're looking at what you need to get an A, right? Did they meet all the above requirements, right? Did the presentation include a complete and accurate description because of the anatomy and the pathology that we just talked about? Did the selected systems, yeah. Did the possession integrate technology, which is what? This PowerPoint. And being able to copy and paste stuff onto this PowerPoint in a neat and presentable fashion. Um, the presentation is well organized, of course. I helped you here, gave you some organization. But you can have your own organization as long as it's what? It's clear. There's a distinct beginning, middle, and end. And of course, at the very end, of course, the actual presentation itself. Were you were you speaking clearly? Were you able to answer some basic questions, right? Did you read off the cue card, or did you just simply read off your PowerPoint? Also look up all the things you shouldn't do in a PowerPoint. Google that because one of them is what? I put too many pictures that make no sense. Or I put too many words that where I can have bulleted points instead of a whole bunch of words. And let me see if I have access to my other class and trying to make that person anonymous. Let's see. Let's see what their presentation looks like. There you go. Okay, this is one of my students. And you can see how he had the entire thing. It's all nice and neat. These figures he in his reference, here's what the reference page. He listed down all the pictures, everything. And he also did well, you can do in and this right here. See this right here? This is in-text citation. He got it from Hurley. So if I look at the list, I gotta look alphabetical order. Here, Hurley, John A. That's what in-text citation is. You put something in there that will say that, oh, I got it from somebody. You see? And he quoted things. And he paraphrased from this Hurley. And then he broke down the medical terminology. Again, did the same thing with the physiology. Then he talked about how, oh, that's how he got away with not citing these pictures. He drew them himself. But again, he also cited stuff. So you could see how he has signs and symptoms. And of course, showed how these relate to all of these. And at the very end, had all his references, and they were in alphabetical order. See, Allspine, then Hurley. So that's a little example on what you can do. All right. Any questions? Please come see me immediately. Do not wait. We're already more than halfway in. Okay. And if you got an email, I asked some of you to see me and you didn't. You please, we need to talk. If I shot you an email, please come see me. If not, I can't help you. Okay, and then you're gonna fail the course, and so please communicate. And like I stated in class, if you have a quiet personality like I do, you got to change that up. Especially in your professional slash academic world, you can be other things, and actually you have to be other things if you want to be successful. All right, that's my spiel. I'm gonna hop off my soapbox right now and produce this video. So have a good one.